Toronto's home sales crashed nearly 19%, but Edmonton's prices are skyrocketing. So is Canada's housing market about to collapse or bounce back? With interest rates still high and household debt piling up, many homeowners could see their mortgage payments spike by nearly 35%. And for buyers, timing the market has never been trickier. In this video, I'll break down the latest market trends across Canada, showing you where the real estate market is cooling, where it's heating up, and how you can make smarter decisions in 2025. Stay with me to the end because most importantly, I'll explain what this all means for you. Real quick, for those who don't know me, my name is Richard. I'm a real estate agent passionate about keeping Canadians informed about what is actually happening in the housing market. So naturally, this channel is all about Canadian real estate, and if you like that and you want to stay up to date, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. And so before we zoom into specific cities, let's just take a quick step back and look at the broader economic forces at play here. Back in December, Canada's job market surprised really everyone. 91,000 new jobs were added, the largest monthly gain in over 2 years. But hold on, because there's a twist. Over 2/3 of these jobs went to people over 55 years old. This suggests that while the headline numbers look strong, younger workers aren't seeing these same opportunities. And with the wage growth slowing down too, only rising just 3.7%, year over year, it's the slowest pace since 2022. And now let's just talk about something that directly impacts mortgages: bond yields. Canada's 5-year bond yield jumped to 3.3% in early January. And why does this actually matter? Well, if you haven't heard it before, when bond yields rise, fixed mortgage rates often go up as well. And so higher mortgage rates make it harder for people to afford homes, especially first-time homebuyers. Now, what I will say is this is always changing, so that's why it's important to stay informed, especially if you're looking at jumping into the real estate market soon. And as you can see here, household debt is another factor that is becoming a major concern for Canadians. The Bank of Canada reported that more households are falling behind on credit payments than any point since mid-2020. And that's before many homeowners who will face mortgage renewals at higher rates this year. And in most cases, we're talking about mortgage payments potentially jumping by 35% for some borrowers. Not good. Then when we look at this graph showing the maturity date of outstanding mortgages, we can see that nearly half of the mortgages we see out there still haven't felt the effects of rate increase. And so when you factor in the household debt is still at all-time high, and the majority of Canadians still haven't felt the effects of rate increases, this could make for an interesting next 2 years. So now that we've set the stage, what does this mean for you? Well, before I get into that, we first need to take a closer look at how these economic trends are playing out in the major Canadian cities. Let's start with Toronto, Canada's largest housing market. December, we saw an 18.7% drop in seasonally adjusted home sales, the biggest decline in almost 2 years. And then when we look at the graph to the left here, where we see detached home sales in the city of Toronto fell to levels we haven't seen in quite some time. And then the condo sales graph here as well on the right, we basically see the same thing happening here as well, which depending if you're a home buyer or seller, it could be good or bad. On top of that, active listings surged 48% year over year, as you can see in this graph to the right here. Detached homes alone shot up 60%. Then when you look at the active MLS graph on the left, we haven't seen this high of inventory for over a decade. And what does that translate to? Well, more houses on the market usually lead to softer prices because buyers have more options. And if that trend continues, sellers may need to adjust their price expectations. What's kind of interesting though is when we look at the graph here on the right, the official house price index went up just 0.4% in December, and house prices have remained somewhat steady for at least 6 months. But there's always a catch. Other indicators like the average days a home stays on the market and the sale to list price ratio suggest the market is cooling. So that small price bump might not last. Now over in Vancouver, it's a completely different story. Home sales have now risen for 4 straight months with a massive 31% increase compared to last year. Single-family homes saw nearly a 40% jump in home sales. That's the strongest performance since the Bank of Canada began rising rates in 2022. But despite this rising demand, prices have barely moved. December, we saw a tiny 0.1% drop in the benchmark price. This soft landing might be exactly what the policymakers were hoping for, a market that stabilizes without crashing. So I'll be keeping a close eye on if anything changes. Now, the 2 last major cities I wanted to talk about is Calgary and Edmonton in Alberta. What's interesting here is that the 2 biggest markets in Alberta are heading in opposite directions. Calgary sales dropped 7% in December, and have been flat for 2 years. Next set of graphs I want to show you is the change in the house price index. Not sure if I've explained this before, but for those of you who are saying, what the heck is an HPI index? Well, simply put, it provides a more accurate and comprehensive way of viewing the housing market price trends, more than just your traditional average or medium house price calculations. So as we can see, Edmonton's sales rose again, pushing prices up by 8% year over year, which is nearly double Calgary's 4.3% increase. Then looking at the graphs here on the left, Calgary seems to be plateauing, while Edmonton is still on a steady increase. Now, you and I both know that time will tell to see if this holds true. The next graphs I wanted to show you are the construction inventory versus home sales, and it's quite interesting as well. Calgary is seeing record construction activity, which means more homes will hit the market soon. Edmonton, on the other hand, hasn't been building as much, leading to tighter supply and stronger price growth. So lots of information to keep up on. But as promised, what does this all mean for you? For homeowners, I'm going to start with you first. So if you're in Toronto, rising inventory could put pressure on prices. And if you're thinking about selling, it might be wise to act sooner rather than later. If you're in Vancouver, you're in a stable market. Prices are holding steady. So unless you need to sell, it could be smart to wait and watch how the market evolves, just depending what you have going on in your life. If you own in Edmonton, you're kind of in a sweet spot, in my opinion. Prices rising and demand growing. Now might be the perfect time to sell. Or if you just bought, you might be seeing some nice equity gains this year. And then for those of you who own in Calgary, I'd suggest carefully assessing your options here. While prices are still rising, slower sales and just an increase in inventory might indicate a shift ahead, where selling before all the supply hits the market could be beneficial. Now, if you are a buyer and looking to get into the market, this would be my advice. If you're looking in Toronto, you might want to be patient. With inventory rising and sales slowing, better deals could be on the horizon. In Vancouver, the market is stabilizing, so now could be a good time to start shopping if you're ready. If you're a buyer in Calgary with the upcoming housing supply that could offer more choices, it might be wise just to hold off a little and see how that unfolds. While if you're looking in Edmonton with the demand rising and limited construction, competition may increase soon, so you may want to consider looking more seriously if purchasing this year is for you. And regardless if you're a buyer or a seller, my advice is to speak to a professional, as it's easy for me to sit here and say what you should do based on numbers, graphs, charts, when in reality, everyone's situation is so different. So please, please, please talk to a professional. But there's more to the Canadian housing market. I've talked about job growth, fluctuating bond yields, and market trends in the major cities, but there's something bigger at play. Canada's slowing immigration and stagnant population growth can, and in my opinion, will reshape the housing market in ways few people are talking about. Because again, what happens when demand softens but supply keeps growing? And so if you're curious, I got a video just for you where I break down how this shift could impact prices, investment opportunities, and really just the Canadian market as a whole. And so while you watch that, I'm gonna go fly some drones.